Hey, this is the Genesee County Compassion Club Show. I'm your host, Jeremy, back in the studio here at allpointstv.com. How's it going, everybody? We got Eric Gunnels in the studio again, and we're going to be talking about politics, of course. Going to be talking about the upcoming election. Going to let you guys know what's happening down at the G3C. Got upcoming events happening. Going to get you up to date with what's up with medical marijuana here in the state of Michigan and across the country. So lots to go over, and man, I'm glad to be back in the studio. It's a beautiful day. We need some freaking rain.
Yeah, we do.
So do a rain dance, say a prayer, whatever it takes. We need it.
We do. We can't even have campfires without the rain.
Oh, it's bad.
I know. I mean, they got a whole countywide burn ban.
As they should.
Yeah. No campfires.
Cigarette smokers, don't toss it out the window right now.
Not right now.
Not a good idea.
Not right now.
You just got to take extra special precaution. It is extremely dry in the area. Most of you are fully aware of that.
Yeah.
Especially you outdoor gardeners. I'm sure you've been watering your stuff nonstop. You'd like to take a break. Hopefully you'll get some reprieve here, but I don't know if there's any like scheduled in the future here. It seems like every time you're like, hey, might get a thunderstorm, and you like hear it off in the distance. So, all right, well, we're going to get started here today. We got lots we want to go over. I got John behind the camera here making it happen. Appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys coming in.
Absolutely. John was showing me a pretty cool bicycle. Just get off topic here right away. Start things off right. A killer bicycle. It's Detroit bike. Yeah?
Detroit bike, yeah.
Detroit bike. He's got it parked out here behind the studio. I'm not going to tell you where we're at. I'm not going to get it. But no, it's sweet, man. It's kind of retro looking, and it's got this cool little like wood platform on the back to put your stuff. It's not like completely old school, but
it reminds me of like an antique car, because it looks like an antique bike, but it is really quality made.
Oh yeah, it's
like
solid.
Yeah, it's very solid. Yeah,
you look at it, you're like, man, I haven't seen a bike like that since I was a little kid.
Well, I haven't even. I don't think I've seen a quality bike like that in a while.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's really like the handlebars.
It's got leather wrapped
on the handlebars. Yeah. The seat looked really leather too.
Yeah.
Really
nice stuff. If you're an enthusiast, check out Detroit Bike. I'm sure they got a website. They're made right in Detroit, so that's extra special.
And the price point for like what you're getting, basically a hand built bike.
Yeah,
this is way below some of the stuff that's higher end mass produced stuff.
Sure. Way below. It's not going to be a huffy price ticket kind of thing, but it's not going to be the French GT carbon fiber. All right, cool. Let's get going here. We got lots of stuff happening down at the club. I want to let you guys know about the upcoming events. First one coming up here, it's really not at the club, but of course we want to support those that support us, kind of like supporting Mr. Gunnels. Another gentleman who's running for office here in Genesee County that I feel pretty personally strongly supportive of is Chris Christensen. He's an attorney currently in the Flint area, and he is running for circuit court judge right here in Genesee County. Now, as you know, judges run nonpartisan, so it's not like he's Democrat or Republican. So I'm not really exactly sure how that works in the primary, but I know there's quite a few people running for the circuit court position, and I believe that we're going to be electing 2 judges. So anyways, Chris Christensen, definitely give a shout out. He has a fundraiser going on tomorrow night, and you can look up his website and check him out and get familiar with him.
At the club?
Oh no, not at the club. He's got a fundraiser, and I'm trying to remember where exactly it's at.
Okay, right on.
Local establishment. You can probably look up his website and check it out. It's open to the public. Right. Buy yourself a meal ticket or whatever, that kind of thing. But,
right on. Awesome.
I want to let people know about him. The judge thing, like every time I get to the voting ballot, and we get, there's all these judges to vote for, and me anyways, I never know anything about them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like Coleman Young, I can remember his name. So should I vote for him? Probably not. But that's how it goes with these judges. And then this is one of those unique opportunities that I've had to actually meet the gentleman and know that he's a good person and somebody who's going to be serving from the bench with some common sense, and also who has an intricate knowledge of the courtroom and the laws and everything else. So you really could ask for a better person. You know what I mean? Like I overheard that there's another person running for same position here in Genesee County with a very common name. I'm not going to say the name, but you know the name because the name's been in the county here for years. And this person's running for a different person, same name, but they're running for the same position, circuit court judge here in Genesee County, and they have I guess no actual courtroom knowledge. They're just what they would call like a a copyright attorney.
Okay, right.
So, someone who's never been set foot in the courtroom, actually defended a case in front of a jury or a judge, why would you want them sitting in the judge's seat?
Right.
You kind of want to have some experience for that job besides just a law degree, I would think.
Absolutely. You would think so, sure.
Yeah, I would think. But anyways, Chris Christensen, check him out, please. Support him if you can, all right? And the next event I want to mention is the Adopt a Highway. It's coming up this Saturday, so hopefully we'll have some good weather and your participation. We can meet at the club at 9 a.m. and we usually, for the majority of us, we just drive straight out to M13. It's between Potter and Beecher, I do believe.
Pearson and Beecher?
No.
No, you guys changed it?
No, we didn't change it.
Pearson Beecher.
Pearson Beecher?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't get the roads mixed up.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Pearson Beecher.
I know if you go to Beecher, you'll be safe.
I know because I did the first one and I was the one in charge of actually distinguishing where it was. So
okay, right on. All right, well, there you go. Meet us out there on M13, 10 a.m. We like to start early so we don't get the heat of the day bearing us down. It's a 1 mile walk in one direction and then 1 mile back. It's not too bad. We did a good job last time, so hopefully have some volunteers show up, help us out this Saturday. All right?
Awesome.
Doesn't take too long. You can do the walk, clean up, make it back for second shift. All right? Lots of time.
Awesome.
Okay, next event coming up July 24th, Soup Kitchen. Definitely could use some help down at the Soup Kitchen. I know it's summertime, a lot of you guys are busy, so if you could volunteer, it is a Tuesday, so hopefully, it won't be tying you up on the weekend kind of thing. A lot of people like to get away for the weekend now.
Sure.
And it's busy at the club as well, so hopefully we're going on a slower time. You guys can help participate, really could use your help, and that is the 24th. It's a Tuesday, so coming up here shortly. I'll give a shout out to the softball team, softball champions, 2 years in a row. You guys rock. We won the tournament last Wednesday. It was quite the tough game, I'll say, but we overcame.
Nice.
And you guys did it. Great job, team. It was awesome, and I think there's a trophy in the club right now, so that's super cool.
That is very
kudos
cool.
to you guys.
Awesome.
I know we've got coming up here the next sporting event, and I do know we have our golf league, so I don't want to cut out the golfers because I'm not a golfer. But if you guys want to give me some scores on how you're doing, I'll be glad to report. At any rate, I do want to mention August 27th coming up is our G3C golf outing, and we're sponsoring this outing, G3C, along with Fenton Hydroponics. It's going to be a great event. I've already got some of the swag back. It looks absolutely freaking amazing. Thank you, George. And you guys will get to have that if you're participating. So there's still time to sign up, and the money goes to support the Hurley Roar Children's Read Foundation. So this helps kids get books, helps them get read to when they're in the hospital under traumatic situations. It's not just here's a book, kid. Somebody actually sits there and reads with them. So it's pretty cool. August 27th.
There should be we should be like a disc golf outing at the club in the future.
Maybe. New at the club, I do want to mention for those of you that haven't made it there, is cornhole. I know you guys are getting into cornhole. It seems to be becoming a big thing. We have cornhole now at the club, and I also have heard, if it's not already there, it might even in fact already be there, is air hockey. So,
oh, nice.
Break it down.
Nice.
All right.
I'm really out of the loop, I guess, because the we did cornhole that I know about, something I want to be part of. What is this? What are you talking about?
It's beanbag toss, John.
Oh, okay. I was like,
yeah. Thank you for clarifying. For those who caught on to the new lingo, I myself was a victim of that. It is otherwise known as beanbag toss.
Yeah.
All right. Newly modified to cornhole. If you're the champion, does that make you the cornholio? The cornholio. All right.
Give us some butthead reference right there.
Okay, so let's get going on here with the news. We've got the first licenses were issued just this last week by Lara. I sat through the grueling meeting online, watched it, and man, oh man, Don Bailey, that dude, he's on the council, right? He's former state police sergeant, I do believe, up from the northern parts of Michigan, and this dude has got a hard-on for law enforcement. I'm sure he was incredibly vigilant in his years of service, but in spite of him and the fact that the chairman, I think the chairman's name is Rick Jones,
of the MMFLA committee,
the board, yeah.
No, it's
Rick Johnson?
Rick Johnson.
Thank you. I always get Jones and Johnson confused.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Rick Johnson. He seems to vote whatever Don Bailey tells him to. But the other guys, other 3 members on the board, overruled them numerous times. And in spite of his points or whatever he was making, they did issue some licenses. Now, the one place that got 4 licenses happened to be recommended for license by Don Bailey. So, whatever. But at any rate, there were 4 licenses issued to a company, VB in Chesaning. These are 4 licenses for C class growing, which is 1,500 plants. So you're looking at 3,000, 6,000 plants. Yep. So there you go. VB in Chesaning, first place permitted by the state to grow for the MMFLA. VB of Chesaning. It is an LLC. They didn't do a whole lot of review of the application in public, so I can't really tell you much more than that about the company. I'm assuming they are in fact in Chesaning. However, even that's speculation at this point. So at any rate,
good point.
They were approved along with a dispensary in Ann Arbor. I think it's called something like Ann Arbor Wellness or something along those lines. And a transport company, Capital Transport, out of Lansing, Michigan. So still yet to be licensed to complete the chain, if you will, would be a testing facility. They have not yet approved a testing facility. And there's an article right now, actually a couple different articles in different papers around the state, highlighting the chain, if you will, seed to sale tracking system, so on and so forth, and how the law really is put together to involve each one of these licenses in getting the product from being grown to the consumer, the patient. So you have to have all of them in the chain to be able to complete the chain. You can't just skip over one. And being that there is no testing facility that is licensed, even if these places that were licensed last week were ready to go today, you still couldn't get something to the shelf because of the fact that they'd have to have that medicine tested. I don't know that VB of Chesaning, the grow place, was already up and growing at the time that they were licensed. I'm assuming that they were not, meaning that their plants would have to be put into the seed to sale tracking system from the start. But there hasn't been a lot of necessarily rules put out in the public to say, all right, can VB of Chesaning go and acquire 6,000 clones from caregivers around the state? Are they? Right. Can they do that? Can they go and order, thousands of seeds online, from some sort of seed distributor? I know that they can get seeds from caregivers, and maybe they have an access to do so. But this is just speculation, just questions being asked. And one of the questions that still has yet to really be answered is when these facilities, like the one in Ann Arbor, the dispensary, is licensed. At the time that they are licensed, they now have to carry a product that is also licensed. And prior to that point, they were allowed to carry the product that was from a caregiver. So the director, Andrew Bisbo, pointed out that it was up to the dispensaries and these other facilities that would be licensed to maintain their own compliance and to sort of figure out, if you will, on their own exactly what they needed to do in order to be and remain compliant. So without really laying them down a blueprint to say this is how you manage your inventory, they're leaving it up to them to tell the state how we're going to manage the inventory. So that'll be very interesting to see how this works. For example, if the place in Ann Arbor is licensed, and they were just this last week, will their shelves be empty now until they're able to have a product from a licensed grow facility that's been tested and transported to them?
Yeah,
blah, 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 blah.
I've actually talked to a couple of the facility people, and yeah, that seems to be the case. Really strangely, I found out the other day that the individual pointed out to me that all the things in that one cabinet were going to have to be sold, like on a clearance, get them off the shelf, sold, whatever. Then they apply for the license. Then they stock the shelf with new products that have been through you said, through the chain. So very interesting how that will all play out, especially considering a lot of places have a substantial amount of product on the shelf right now.
Absolutely.
And it seems to reason there's going to have to be at least some discussion to at least cushion that transition.
How do they manage their inventory?
Right, because
and remain compliant in doing so.
Well, and you want a smooth transition into this. You don't want to get rid of everything. Okay, now you're going to wait a few weeks, maybe months, and then you'll put stuff on the shelves. Customers are still coming in the doors if they've already, and that's up till what September 5th.
September 15th is
a whole year after the last September 15th.
Right. Well, the deadline about September 15th, and this is something else I wanted to bring up because the director, Andrew, stated that, or sort of alluded that they will not be extending their September 15th deadline, and that applicants that have yet to submit an application will have no chance of having their application approved prior to September 15th. And he also made implications that some of the people in the current chain right now of the 400 applications that are already received will not be reviewed by that date, and that it would be on them again to remain compliant, meaning that after the 15th, they'll have no protection to continue having an inventory from caregivers and patients, yet they'll be waiting on an approval from the state so that they can acquire legally medication from one of these new licensed facilities. So, I mean, this is really a conundrum that the state's putting itself into, and
Totally.
we're interested to see how these new entrepreneurial companies will jump through hoops to try to remain compliant. Some, it seems, are able to roll over rules with a bulldozer, and others seem to be caught in the crosshairs of minor details. I think there was one applicant during last week. It was denied because it had juvenile conviction, and this person's an adult and has been one for quite some time. But there was another applicant that had a question or was questioned on their application by the board on an incident resulting from, I believe, over 40 plus years ago, which was a misdemeanor even at that. So, I mean, really extreme and thorough examination being done by the board in some cases, and in others, I mean, at least appearance to the public, it seems like they hardly reviewed, such as like the VB of Chesney. Now, we don't know what was on their application, and maybe it was above reproach, but even that being said, it does seem to cause alarm, cause question, and with us not being able to see what's going on behind the scenes completely and only getting sort of glimpses into what the board's doing, we sort of assume the worst.
Right. But just an overall, disappointment in the system or the flow of the whole program itself. When we see the faults, coming to the fruition, we can see this happening, and yet the state is providing no solution. It's like, well, okay, we know we're going to drive off a cliff. How do we build this bridge? And the state's sort of like, well, it's up to you, but you better have a bridge. So we'll have yet to see how this goes, and we'll keep you guys informed and keep reporting on it as it comes to light. But very interesting situation. You could say for now that these businesses have an exclusive monopoly, but also have no ability to actually have a product on the shelf or have a transaction either. So very, very interesting. And I guess I was thinking about it from the standpoint of the grow facility that was licensed, the licenses. There they have. They're off. They legally can start the day that they were approved, and they're off to the races. So in reality, they have a jump start on the rest of the entire market here in Michigan because they were the first ones approved to start producing cannabis. And which leads me into another argument that my point is that it sort of defeats the entire point of what they said they wanted the process to be. The board originally said that they wanted the process to be more streamlined so that no one did have a head start in this industry amongst other people, but yet that in reality that was not going to happen. And we all see this kind of a long way off. Those of us that were paying really close attention to this, I was going to all the MMFLA meetings. I went to every single one of them until the last two, I think. And then basically, what I just wanted to see how the program was going to roll out. Well, once I realized that they had all those applicants and that they were only doing like two to three per meeting.
Yeah, and even this meeting here, I think they only reviewed maybe a dozen or so.
Right, and they have like meetings 2 months apart. At that moment, I was like, okay, this is going to be a slow and grueling process.
Absolutely. And look, we're halfway through July now.
Right, and
you got basically 2 months left before their own deadline comes along, and they've only scratched the surface of the amount of applications they have. If they have nearly 500 applications in total, 400 and some through whatever process it is that they talk about, and yet I think they haven't yet gone through, at least publicly, 40 applications, so they haven't even got through 10% of what's sitting there in front of them.
Right.
And yet we only have 2 months left, and they've gone through what, almost 8 months.
Right. And the year is half over.
Yeah, you've already pissed through 8 months.
Right. So and then that calls into question another thing too. I mean, these applicants sending in their money, all this and that. Does that count for this year? And if this year is already half over, by the time that they actually get permitted to,
they did clarify that. They said that their application date or their approval date, when they are approved, is when they're going to be due for a renewal the following year. Okay, so it kind of takes care of that issue.
Okay, right.
So
they
answer the simple stuff.
Right, I was
but
going to say
the important thing, like, what are you going to get your meds from?
Well, and
they don't have answers for that.
Think about how many of these facilities had expected to be open, yet so many of them have had to shut down simply because the process didn't roll out like it was supposed to.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the whole.
Yeah. All right, so that's the news on the MMFLA. Let's move on here. Other things that are going on with medical marijuana here in Michigan, and this is now official, is that the state has added on qualifying conditions to the Medical Marijuana Act. So these are specific conditions that if a person suffers from, they now qualify for Michigan medical marijuana. These were the same conditions that were approved and recommended by the panel, and now they've been officially approved and are now part of the state law. So I'll just run through them real quickly, give you guys the list. And some of these may sound, you may think, well, I have that and I already qualified for medical marijuana. You may have been using the secondary qualifier, which says, like things like chronic pain, severe and persistent muscle spasms. So, maybe you didn't have an approval for Parkinson's itself. You had approval for your muscle spasms.
Right.
Now you actually have approval for the Parkinson's. Right. So for some of you, it's tit for tat and really won't make a difference. Other people out there, it may actually be now a qualifying factor and something that you could get it for. Yep. So the list here it is. First one off is arthritis. Second is autism. Third is chronic pain. And I know a lot of folks right now were already qualified through chronic pain, but now it's actually listed as a condition, a qualifying condition. The next one is colitis. The next is irritable bowel disease, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I think that's kind of interesting there. It's actually a more of a mental ailment, and it's qualified. So I think that's fantastic. Parkinson's, as I mentioned, rheumatoid arthritis as well as regular arthritis, spinal injury, Tourette's, and ulcerative colitis. So a lot of digestive things were brought onto the list and added, as we stated.
There's
OCD,
also mental and neurological.
Mental, that's right, and neurological. So, and that's kind of what we have going on here with today's background. And for those of you who are wondering, what is that thing? This is a picture, or a rendition anyways, of what it looks like when cell pathways are repaired. And the concept behind that is cannabis helps repair those pathways in the brain. So some of the things that can disconnect and no longer have a current like they should can potentially be repaired by cannabis use. So it's an amazing thing. It's really cool.
Right. I'm glad you have the photo up for the viewers. That's awesome.
By the way,
I was just in my brain. I had like this stuff floating around.
Sorry to interrupt, but last night I was just talking to a woman whose son has Asperger's syndrome, autism, and he was having some seizures along with this a while back. They got it under control on their medicines, regular medications. But she was saying if it hadn't worked, she was going to go opt for the oils and stuff. And now, is that one of the things too that they're going to allow for? Is the seizures connected to autism or other diseases or what?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So if they had something like autism itself is now a qualifying condition, John, but if they had something related, like for that example, if it was technically Asperger's, but now this person also has seizures, they would still qualify because of the fact that they suffer from persistent seizures and muscle spasms. So that part of the law still exists, and now we have these added additional specific conditions to sort of clarify what exactly it is that they're getting their medicine for. So, but no, good point. And I think that a lot of these conditions here, I think, really we're starting to get into some very specific types of ailments, and I think that also requires a specific treatment method. And exactly what that method is, I can't tell you for sure, because it's going to depend on the individual and on the symptom, of course. So I think what we're going to be seeing a lot of is more medicinally created and crafted solutions for patients, such as like what you're mentioning there, John, with CBD oil. And the CBD oil, yes, it is effective, and I think it's a great tool. I don't think it's the only tool out there, and I would encourage patients, especially caregivers of minor patients, to seek out all of the different tools in the toolbox, not just look at one. But the nice thing about the CBD oil, a lot of patients are concerned with, and parents especially, in treating autistic children or children with Asperger's syndrome, is they don't want to have their kid be high, of course.
Sure.
So a CBD oil is a nice way to see if it's effective and to also not have to worry about your child getting high. Sure. But there may be other types of medicines that are going to be more effective, and I would say I don't want to discourage someone from using those other products just because they don't necessarily have the CBD only profile.
Right.
And I think if you look at a lot of these, I've heard from some people that suffer from different types of digestive or bowel misfunctions that eating it was not effective. It really did not help. It really was a horrible experience. So you do have to be careful about how you're administering your medicine and really sort of experiment, for lack of a better word. And you do have to kind of guinea pig yourself or the patient and try different things and give them a little time to work. Most of the times when you go to a physician, they give you a new medication. They say, try this for 2 or 3 days and then let me know. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And cannabis is the same way. If you just try it one time and if you found it incredibly displeasurable or if scared the crap out of you, made you sick, don't do it again, of course. Or maybe lessen the dosage. Don't take quite as much. But don't be afraid to try it again. Use it for a few times, see if it's going to be effective. I know a lot of folks that have not used cannabis at all, and then they find themselves in the cancer boat, and now they're trying Simpson oil. Well, Simpson oil is a concentrated form of cannabis. It's incredibly strong, and on top of that, you're ingesting it, which makes it even more effective. And a lot of folks, when they try it for the first time, they're like, holy crap, knocked me out, where I didn't even remember my name. I was incredibly high. So again, you have to work with the dosage to try to figure out what's right for you, because it's going to be different for everyone. Someone may take a grain of rice as far as the Simpson oil and feel nothing at all, and someone else might take that same grain of rice amount and just be out for 8 hours. And so you also want to be careful when you're trying out your medication. Be at home. Maybe make sure someone else is there if you can. Make sure you're staying hydrated and you're not overheating. Just simple things. You're not going to have
right.
It shouldn't be too intense for you to where you can't handle it. But if you need to calm down, have something to eat, take a nap, take a shower, whatever it is that makes you feel a little bit better, keeps you calm. Yep. And then and again, don't be afraid to try it again. Just use a little bit less if you had a experience that scared you, but do try different stuff, because there's a myriad of different products out there and they all work different ways.
Yep.
And they all work differently for different people too.
That's true. So, that's very true. That's interesting, Jeremy. We've about 8-9 years ago is when you started doing the podcast here, and I joined you in doing the podcast and all that. I remember we used to do these shows weekly, and we used to talk about all the different ailments that should be added to the list.
Sure.
Of things, and we talked for years about how we expected different ailments as new scientific studies came out that found plausible research with a certain
and there were some obvious
we would talk about on the show. We'd go, oh yeah,
why isn't Parkinson's on the list?
Right. Why isn't
PTSD on the list?
Why isn't autism on the list?
And just like you
right, and just like you had mentioned before, where it may not have an effect on some people because they already either got the qualifying condition card for their for a chronic pain condition or otherwise, but for some people who especially they have children with autism, being a parent and giving your child something that has been such a controversial issue as cannabis has been for the last however many years it's been illegal.
Sure.
And that makes a lot of parents nervous about trying this for the first time. And oftentimes, if law enforcement gets involved with a parent experimenting with cannabis in their child, bad things can happen.
Sure.
CPS
gets called.
of course. And then all of a sudden, they're all looking at this from a prohibition standpoint of view of cannabis, and then all of a sudden your life gets all tangled up and all that. So for these qualifying conditions to be added to the list is a really huge step forward for the community, for our state. Also for all the parents and the people out there who have these conditions who couldn't either get their medical marijuana card because they didn't qualify, or out of simple fear of the law or public persecution because it wasn't, if they got their kid their medical marijuana card but it wasn't a qualifying condition on the list, you may appear to be a bad parent.
Right.
And so that was a big thing for a lot of folks.
I agree with what you're saying, and I think also from the professional standpoint, hopefully we'll see more physicians now start to step up and say, okay, well, yes, it has been recognized by the state. There's studies I can review to back up my practice, and hopefully see more people step up in the professional world and start to issue out these recommendations. Because I tell you what, a lot of these doctors that have stepped up and continue to consistently provide recommendations across the state, and there's a handful of them that do the majority of the recommendations in Michigan, they have taken an enormous amount of flack from LARA, from the state, and they've had their licenses reviewed. They've had suspensions and revocations and fines and all kinds of stuff, and just really challenging their own professional opinions. And then that's really all this is it's a professional opinion. So for a physician to do that really shouldn't be a big deal, and they shouldn't have to feel like they're being a black market doctor or a pill pusher or something like that, because that's really the farthest thing from the truth. A lot of these physicians that do recommend cannabis want to see you get off from the pills and stuff like that. So
one friend that I have that this really helped for was a woman by the name of Amy Carter, and her son had autism and has autism, and she fought trying to get him help for years because of this, and since this was recently added to the list of qualifying conditions, she's been one of those people that's been significantly helped. And she's done a recent news article. I think you've seen it. You may have seen it on the news.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but so it's helped people like that. I know personally. So it's a real thing. It's helped a lot of people. Come forward with this whole thing, and we got to thank all the people that helped get those qualifying conditions moved forward.
Yeah, definitely. I know Michael Camorn was a big part of that.
He was.
And, he's a cannabis attorney. A lot of you guys know him.
Yep.
And so if you want to thank somebody, he's the guy.
Yes, for sure. Give a shout out to him and everyone else. There's a lot of other people I know helped to make that happen. So kudos and shout out to those people.
Yeah, and you're right. Public opinion continues to improve, continues to grow. There's a new survey that just came out, I believe, today. It was taken and sort of almost in response to the survey that came out a couple weeks ago, saying that maybe medical marijuana, recreational marijuana wouldn't be a popular thing on the ballot. This survey says the opposite. It's saying of the 800 people that they surveyed, 60% support recreational marijuana, plan to vote for it. 35%, I think is what it was, said they do not support it. Yep. And then of course there's the wishy-washy leeway in the middle. But 60% for rec marijuana is a pretty high number, and that was a number that we used to have for medical marijuana. That number has only increased.
I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and judging by what Florida passed theirs by 73%. So
that's in Florida.
And that's in Florida.
Yeah.
Now, but that's also 10 years later, or 8 years later. But still, clearly we are seeing the trends of this making a change in the society. So
another conservative place like Florida is Pennsylvania. They just recently announced that they're going to be expanding their medical marijuana program. They're going to be adding conditions to their list, and also starting to allow patients to access flower. Originally, their law passed, and you could only have concentrate or edible, whatever it was. Right. Now they'll be able to access flower, which makes it a lot more accessible in general to the patients there. So good stuff.
Yeah, it is good stuff.
Very good stuff.
Well, that's another reason that it's one of the main issues on my platform for state representative, because it is one of the biggest main issues of our time. And I mean, you could make that statement. That statement is true at the presidential level, because it's talked about all the time at the presidential level.
Absolutely.
Legalizing cannabis, what to do about all the states going legal, what to do about all the states going medical, what does the federal government even do about medical, is a discussion at the federal level and the presidential level. Then you have the state levels where the states have passed medical marijuana. Our state has legalization going on the ballot this November. Not to mention in the governor's race, all 3 governor positions on the Democratic ticket have all came out in favor of marijuana legalization. That's a huge, significant thing, landslide. So really, politically, there's no better time to be in favor of this change. And this really is the biggest, most significant social change of our time.
Yeah.
I mean, I get
that was
criticized.
one of the things in the article they were saying was that in spite of what people thought, as far as governor, who should run, who should win, whatever, they said, well, whatever those candidates decide to do, they better support marijuana.
That's right.
It's a pretty strong support.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about the candidacy. We've got the primary coming up here.
Yep.
That is August 7th. So it's right around the corner, about 3 weeks away.
Right.
And, I was thinking about the primary myself this morning because it just kind of reminded me of the primary that we went through 2 years ago on a presidential level when, it looked like you actually had, as a voter, at the primary stage, it looked like you had some choices for your president. Okay. And, by the time the primary was over with, well, it was it's always whittled down to 2. And our state election is really no different. And it's really disappointing to me anyways that we've been dumbed down as a society to only be able to select from 2. I think that's just stupid. And why can't people vote for something else besides red or blue? But the fact remains that's what happens. And so consequently, really as a voter, if you want to vote for someone that actually has a shot at winning, you got to make sure that they land on the Republican or the Democratic ticket when it comes up to the voting. And so if they and if they don't, then they end up Green Party or Libertarian, and it never works.
Or independent.
You know what I mean? Or independent. You know what I mean? And it's just a crapshoot at that point. You might as well just do a write-in. You know what I mean?
Right.
So unfortunately, the way that we've dumbed ourselves down, we've come to only select from the red or the blue sides. And because of that, again, really, the only choices that you can really have are in the primary. And that's because, if you look at right now, the governorship, gubernatorial race that's going on, you have the Republican side, you've got quite a different selection there, 3 different runners. I think you have more than that, actually, but at least on the Republican side, there's 3 front runners. You got Schuette, Calley, and is it Colbeck? Is that it, John? Colbeck?
I believe so. Colbeck's the one name I've heard thrown around.
That's another one. And then on the Democratic side, of course, you have Whitmer, you've got Sri Thanadar, and you have
Abdul.
Thank you, Abdul Saeed. The other top 3 competitive people. And so I feel like, there you go. You have 6 people to choose from.
But not in November.
Red or blue.
But not in November.
But not in November. And that's right. So after the primary is over, it's going to be one person from each side.
Right.
And then you're going to get to pick, and it always seems, at least for the last, 20 years, and it's probably been a hell of a lot longer than that. But in my voting life, it always seems like you're picking the lesser of 2 evils.
Right.
And for goodness sake, I'd like to just pick one time somebody that I actually support. That I'm like, yes, I want that person in office.
Right.
And so I don't know who that person is for you when it comes to the gubernatorial race. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. I don't have the answer. But at least when it comes to the 48th district, I do have an answer. I've got somebody finally that'll listen to me. He's sitting right next to me. And it doesn't get any better than that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the issues because this race is more than marijuana.
Right.
And when it comes to candidates, I think it's good that candidates are coming out now and supporting marijuana. Frankly, I think they're all a bunch of chicken shits because they should have been supporting it 10 years ago. But now that it's popular, they're all like, oh yeah, me too. Eric's not one of those guys. He stood up when it wasn't popular and put his neck on the line. And so that shows you some character right there.
Thank you.
But we also have some other issues on the ticket that we have to consider and stuff that is obviously going to probably primarily dominate your time should you be elected. It's not going to be marijuana.
Right.
And I think that's one of the other things that a lot of the other candidates are missing is that legislation has passed them by. We took it. We took the ball, we passed medical marijuana, and now we're going to do it again with recreational, and it has nothing to do with our legislators because they didn't have the guts to deal with it. And So at any rate, they're not going to be dealing with it. So I don't care if they support it or not at this point. I mean, I want them to support it, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But in reality, what they think about it at this point is moot. And so let's talk about the other issues, all right? We got things like taxes. And historically, at least to the broad spectrum picture, okay, Democrats like taxes. Okay, now many of you might say, oh, that's not true. But if you just look at the regular picture, Republicans supposedly don't like them, Democrats supposedly do. And that's all a bunch of BS. That's not true at all. But
because both really support.
They both love taxes.
They both love taxes.
But Eric, where do you stand on taxes on a state level? I mean, I know obviously, a lot of times we as voters confuse what our taxes go for and to, and so on and so forth. And so we look to our politicians and we complain to all of them about all of our taxes, when in reality, our state legislators can only affect a few different types of taxes.
Right.
So when it comes to those, where do you stand at?
Well, taxes basically are what we do to pool our money together to pay for socialized things, like our roads, our fire department, our police department, our military, and all those things, the secretaries and all the people that work in those offices, and all these things connected to it. But right now, we pay a lot of taxes. And I think that's a very broad, generalized statement. But I think if I just said it out loud and I took a polling, I think you'd see the polling would agree with me. The general public, I think, right now would agree with me. We already pay a lot of taxes. So the question then becomes, what is that money spent on? So primarily what I am, and even though I'm running as a progressive Democrat that has a progressive view on his platform, which my platform will get into that in a moment, taxes, I look at I'm really a reformer at heart, meaning that I want to get in there and I want to look at our system with a fine-tooth comb. Meaning that I know, because I've already had 6 years of experience as a township trustee, that as soon as I was elected into there, I started looking at different things we were spending money on. Okay, whether it's the cemetery, whether it's the fire department, the police department, who's got gas cards, where does it go? How much average are we spending on this or that? These are all these different things on a state level will just be like what I did with the trustee position, but only on a bigger level, a statewide position. And I'll be looking at all the different departments and all the different areas of our state and what we actually spend on, from our parks to our roads, to the infrastructure, to subsidies. All these kind of things will be looked at, from the criminal justice system to the welfare programs, all of it. And we've got to sit down and look. I mean, I don't know everything, and I don't know an expertise on every area of tax field, but I just certainly know that a lot of our tax money goes to really wasteful spending. And you have pockets of our government that once they get a bit of that money coming in, they want to steadily increase that money always.
Absolutely.
And since I was elected a trustee in 2012, a vote came up to increase taxes without it going to a vote of the people. And I voted no on that because I felt that it was wrong for the elected officials to override the people's voice and increase their taxes without it going to a vote of the people. That is on my record. You can look that up. And I voted no on an increase of a special assessment because I felt like the budget needed to be crunched down more, and we needed to just put money back in other areas. And we were too far in the red to continue on certain things in certain departments of the township that are going to continue to put us in the red. You can't keep
it. It sounds like you're not for raising taxes,
right?
Unless the people approved.
Of course.
And said, hey, we want to pay more.
Which we want more. Which will happen in the November vote, because if we vote to legalize marijuana, obviously there will be a excise tax connected to it, and that tax revenue is meant by the law, and it's written in the language of this bill, that money revenue is supposed to be divided up, and it's supposed to go into roads and schools, and I think a small portion of it to the municipality.
Sure.
So, but likewise, we had legislation passed before where money from the lottery was supposed to go into schools. Now, a lot of people, if you go to door like I do, and you take a general consensus, a lot of people ask the question, where's the money from the lotto going? And does it really go to the schools? That's a good question, and so I also need to look into that. I have many questions about that myself, so I'd like to know where that money goes also. And it's very difficult to be on the outside of politics, looking at it, and to be on the inside. When as a trustee, I get board packets and I get revenue and expenditure sheets that I would never get as a regular person.
Right.
So you've got to be an elected official in order to get the information in front of you to be able to know exactly where we are as a state and where we need to go. So that's taxes.
All right. So in an area like education, I think most people would agree that we need improvement in our public schools.
True.
As far as taxes go, though, I would assume that you would be not for raising taxes to make that improvement.
Right.
You're going to be looking for ways to
cut other departments, cut other areas. Let's transition.
Trim the fat, sort of.
Trim the
mentality.
fat. Let's drain the swamp. Trim the fat. Let's get in there. Let's make some changes to some areas. And no, I don't think that public funds should be going to private schools for profits.
I was just going to say, quick, simple question: yes or no? Charter schools?
No, I'm not.
Not a fan.
No, not a fan of. Not a fan of public dollars being spent on them. If you want to, send your kid to whatever school, on your own dollar, that's fine.
Right.
But public dollars need to be spent for a public education.
Okay. How about automobile insurance? I know it's a hot topic right now in the election, and I guess, of course, everybody wants lower rates, right?
Sure.
How do we do that? What are you going to do at the legislative level to impact this problem?
Excellent question. And automobile insurance, we've got a bit of a problem where Michigan is and I don't know the exact language on this, but I know that it's tied to this the way Michigan's healthcare system is. I know that we end up paying a higher premium in this state than any other state because of the way that our state's public health
catastrophic insurance fund.
Yes, and that somehow puts us in our automobile insurance, and it stacks it right up. Not to mention, we already to begin with we're paying one of the highest premiums of anywhere in the country, and then you add that on top of that. Now we are fully paying drastically higher than everybody else. So this needs to be examined with a fine-tooth comb. I couldn't spout off every answer on how to fix it because I think it's going to be way more complicated when I actually dive into it, especially when you're talking about being connected to the healthcare industry of Michigan. So sometimes what happens is like automobile insurance is like tied into our healthcare.
Sure.
In a sense.
Sure.
So if you want to change that, you've got to legislatively dive into the entire healthcare system.
Oh yeah, they like to mingle the things, so it makes it difficult. You can't just say, well, it's because of this, so if we take care of that, it's gone.
Of course.
It's not that simple.
And then, of course, you're going to have blowback from the insurance companies that are going to say, oh, no, there are reasons you can't do that. And they're going to come in with their lobbyists, and they're going to come in with their persuasion, and they're going to try to persuade the dominant party in the legislative, or capital to go one way or another, the way that they want us to, not the way that the people want us to. And that's one of the biggest things is I'm going to Lansing to represent the people. I'm not going there to make decisions on your behalf because I think I know better. Look, I do think I'm a good decision maker, and I think I have a good judgment, but skills. But that I want to represent the people. I want the people's voice to be heard. For example, as a trustee right now, I want the tax issue to go to a vote of the people, and we have time right now. Even as a trustee, I have time to persuade my board to put a vote to the ballot to just the voters of my township, so that my township can decide on their taxes. So,
sure.
I want the.
And I know a lot of times, small towns and so on, they don't like to take things to the ballot because there's a cost associated with that.
Right.
And they'd rather just pass it on their own.
But then we do have a free ticket because we already have an election year.
Sure.
So we're already paying.
You already have an election. It's not a special election.
Exactly. Right. And I think it's only minimal to have something added, language added as a proposal.
So it's more economical to do it now
on an election year.
Right.
Yes, whether it's
rather than hold a special election, which no one shows up for anyway.
Right. Exactly.
Especially out in areas like Thetford.
Right.
Everybody's gone to work.
Right.
All right. Some of the other issues that are facing candidates, facing us here in Michigan, besides things like education and the roads, which really sort of revolve around taxes. You know what I mean? And what are we doing with our tax money, and so on and so forth. I know criminal justice, you have this on your platform as well.
Sure.
What about criminal justice? I mean, you got on here that's broken, so on and so forth. What do we need to do to our criminal justice system to make changes?
I think the criminal justice system, one major aspect of the criminal justice system, and I think everyone knows this from my advocacy of cannabis reform, is that we have essentially a criminal justice system that has been artificially created and inflated to deal with cannabis-related issues. And if you look at the docket of any courtroom, you see that the cannabis-related crimes are the highest number of crimes. It's the most number. It's the number one arrest. And even when you go to court for something else, oftentimes the cannabis thing comes back to bite you. So so you get your driver's license suspended for driving on a suspended license. Oh, but you also had this cannabis thing. Oh, well, you were on probation for that. Well, we're going to tack some additional time on you. Oh, some additional penalties. Whatever the case is, you often get additional penalties because of cannabis. This goes in the form of when parents are being separated, going through separation, in which parent the child goes with the parent. The other parent can use marijuana as a vice against the other parent, as leverage to get the courts to side with the children with them. That's unfair to the parent that has a medical marijuana card, which CPS does not recognize. These are all part of family court reform. I believe in 50-50 custody. Maybe not in the early infant years of the child, but as soon as the child is I mean, come on. I'm not no expert on this, but I would lean on the experts to give me their opinion on what they think it would be in the appropriate age. But yes, 50-50 custody. Family court, I think, needs some reform. CPS needs some reform. I think that we need...
Are you for privatizing prisons? Because I know this is a big issue now. No. Especially here in Michigan.
No, prisons should not be privatized, and I want to cut that out. Because and I really don't like the entire criminal justice system operating on a profit-driven base agenda. And
seems kind of sort of contrary to
exactly. If our law enforcement is out there to enforce and to serve and to protect, then let's have them do that. I advocate for more law enforcement to be in and around schools to protect our schools. We can use conjoined resources to help pay for that. I would rather see law enforcement protecting our children in a school than driving around trying to bust people for marijuana. I think that's just I just don't. Sure. I've never seen marijuana as a problem. I've not talked to most people. They don't see it as a problem. Most people want marijuana, like the polls are saying, marijuana to be legalized. Let's end that. Let's look at all the rape kits. There's over 400 rape kits in Lansing that aren't tested because of that.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, there are 400 rape kits in Lansing that at the state crime lab that are not tested simply because they are so busy testing. They're backlogged testing marijuana. So there's a big reform in adjustment that needs to be made there. Even after legalization happens this fall in November, there will still be legislative reform that needs to take place. Even in the job employment field, we can't have employers being able to fire people because of what they do in the privacy of their own home. You wouldn't get fired if you drank at a wedding reception on a weekend outside of your work hours.
Right.
I understand if you come to work drunk, hungover, sick, or just simply hopped up on pills or whatever you're high on. You could be reprimanded or fired. But you should not be penalized for what you do in the privacy of your own home. I know many people that work in the union that agree with me on that principle alone. Sure. That drug testing is simply for marijuana purposes, especially after it becomes legal for adults, will be obsolete. Also, let's get the after legalization this fall, let's get the people out of jail that are there for nonviolent drug offenses of marijuana.
Absolutely.
Let's get those people out and let's expunge their records. It's not hard to do. We can do that. Let them out. Hey, look, society made a mistake. We've changed. Fine. Move on. Get on with your life.
Fresh start.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we know where you stand on cannabis. We're not going to get into that. I know another big topic for Michigan is gun rights.
Yes.
And I personally am under the personal belief that our gun rights are not under attack. And I know that's probably contrary to the normal public opinion, but if you look at gun sales, they're still doing pretty good. But at any rate,
for sure.
being a Democrat, a lot of times Democratic candidates are typically and even if they're not anti-gun, they're sort of reserved to, like for the example, the bump stock issue.
Sure.
A lot of Democrats out there would say, yes, ban bump stocks. Where do you stand on it? Should we ban bump stocks?
No, and here's why. Because then we're getting into
that ass.
Well, for one, you can. I mean, I've seen YouTube videos where you can carve a bump stock out of a 2x4. So I mean,
prohibition doesn't work at guns.
Right? Prohibition does not work. I'm well versed in understanding how prohibition works. I've seen it work with marijuana. I've seen it fail with marijuana and all other drugs. We saw prohibition fail with alcohol from 1919 to 1933. We know that prohibition only creates black market and black market crime.
Right on.
Banning something.
You stand for gun rights?
I stand for the Second Amendment all the way. I do not believe in banning guns.
Assault weapons should not be banned.
Not banned. No.
All right. So we're clear
and
there.
the reason I don't want to ban those kind of things is because it's a slippery slope. Once we start infringing upon the constitutional rights, it's a slippery slope. We can't do that. We must stand firm for our constitutional rights. I'm a constitutionalist at heart, and I adhere to those principles in all my decision making for the people. Secondly, banning guns does not make people safe. Regardless of what you hear in the arguments of the news media, if you have real intelligent people having a real intelligent debate, banning guns does not make people safe. The majority of gun deaths are caused by hand pistols, and that is not even talked about hardly at all in the media.
Sure.
And so,
let's segue a little bit, because I think that the gun rights issue is brought up as an issue in response to a greater problem in our country, which is I'll call it terrorism, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
Whether it be terrorism in our schools from students losing it.
Sure.
Terrorism at the post office from the crazy guy, terrorism in the subway station from the whatever it is. When we see these horrific events occur, the first conversation that normally comes up is a gun right thing.
Right.
And so you support gun rights. We know where you stand there.
Right.
What do we do about these situations?
Well, in schools, first of all, they're a gun-free. Most schools are a gun-free school zone. When it's a gun-free school zone, that's like putting up a sign that says "There's nobody around here with a gun," and that means that
come and get it.
Right,
yeah.
And that just makes a school zone an easy target. I don't want to
favor of armed security guards at the school. Or do you want to arm the teachers?
Yeah,
I saw something on John Oliver the other day where we should arm the students. But,
well, I saw one on John Oliver too, where the principal actually suggested he was going to get a bucket of stones and put it in the closet in the classroom, and then in case the kids can all grab the stones and throw them at the guy with the gun.
So
these are foolish ideas. Okay,
and I know we can't just go craft our own solution and say this is the way it's going to be. But what would you do?
Let's break it down. Let's break it down to some very simple things. Number one, school resource officers. When I went to high school, I always saw a police officer in and around the school. Maybe he wasn't in the school all the time. Maybe he was parked outside the school. Maybe he only showed up during certain hours. Maybe I only passed him in the hallway once in a while. But there was a resource officer in and around the school. This is a good thing. Having a trained officer who is not only equipped with body armor and a proficient gun, he is also trained to use that firearm in a tactful and stressful manner situation. So the individual has training. I'd rather see a trained officer individual in and around a school, like Clio High Schools did a very good job of this. They got extra resources. The school board voted on this. They had resources put to an officer to come in and around, drive through the school parking lots at certain different various times of the day, during different various times of the week. That way, it's not planned or timed scheduled so that someone can get around that schedule. Mm-hmm. So that means we have quicker response time. Security systems of the school should never be on a 19-minute delay like they were in the recent Florida school shooting. School security systems should be up to speed. The the entry ways of getting into a school. There should be kind of a, not necessarily look like a prison, but you should have to walk into one door.
Should we have metal detectors at the schools?
I would leave that up to the school board, each school board of a district, to decide that for themselves. Because I would think that in some schools, maybe you need it. Maybe in some states or some areas, maybe you need it. Maybe in some areas, you don't. So
I think you're on the right line there, Eric, because I think that Clio is a good example. It's a well-populated area, but it's also well-to-do in general. It's not one of these poorer inner city type situations.
True.
However,
True.
They obviously had some issues there, and the community addressed it, and they were able to resolve it by having a police officer come in and have a presence in the school, and having the resources to bring that individual there.
Yes.
In other instances, you may need a full-time armed security at the school, or like you stated, metal detectors. Or
let's just communicate well with our. Let's coordinate and communicate with our police forces around the state.
Sure.
And look, instead of having 20 officers stand on a curbside looking for seatbelt checks so that they can get money for additional monies. That's what I don't like. I don't like our law enforcement and firemen being used in a way to revenue seek or revenue hunt on the public, as if though there's some kind of pirates looking for revenue hunting. That's wrong. I would rather us pay our first responders well. Let's get them in the right places where they are needed and most useful. And I believe that in and around schools, protecting our most valuable possessions, where better else place to put them.
I agree with you there, Eric. I'd much rather see police officers in our schools than trying to stop someone for going 5 miles an hour too fast.
Or not wearing a seatbelt.
Not wearing a seatbelt.
I mean, come on. We got people driving on the road on motorcycles. Are they wearing a seatbelt? No.
Right.
I mean, come on. Let me.
And then don't have to wear a helmet anymore.
Look, does wearing seatbelts save lives? Okay, sure. I'll agree. The stats show yes, it certainly does. Okay. Is that the state's responsibility to make sure everybody's
But I think it does sort of show the collusion, if you will, in our state between insurance companies and the state itself. And this is something that you're seeing with automobile insurance rates, and you also see it with law enforcement. And it is unfortunate that our police officers have to police for profit, and the practices that come from that.
Right.
And so I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good platform for change, because we need some changes. And a lot of times changes aren't necessarily, we need a new program, or we need more funds, or sometimes it's just we need to go back and do it right.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
So
and that's really what it's all about. And like I said, I believe Michigan has a number of laws that are kind of barbaric and just need to be done away with. I mean, cannabis laws are certainly among the top of the list. But I think that we need to have some very progressive views on these things. As far as the Second Amendment goes, I'm a Second Amendment candidate. I just don't believe in banning guns or accessories. I do believe in sensible gun legislation. I do believe that a universal nationwide background check is a good when you're making a new purchase. That's fine. And I think every responsible gun owner can agree with that. The NRA certainly agrees with that. That ensures that if someone commits a crime, let's say in Texas, they don't just come to Michigan the next week, and the Michigan State crime lab has no idea that they committed a crime in Texas.
Absolutely. So, or for that matter, if they got out of the mental hospital in Alabama,
absolutely,
and then drove up here,
and and fine, I'm certainly okay with putting red flags on people who are mentally ill and a very, very likely potential danger to themselves or others. So I mean, do we need to restrain someone who is mentally ill? Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't allow certain individuals to operate machinery cars.
That's right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with preventing them gun access either.
Right.
And I don't think that a responsible gun owner would have a problem.
Right. I think almost everyone could agree. Yeah.
All right. That's almost all the time we have for the show today. I know we wanted to get through some of the issues, give Eric a chance to talk about his platform, because there are a lot of important issues this coming election, and the election really, honestly, it's on August 7th.
Right.
All right. So please, guys, mark your calendars. It's a Tuesday, just like always. First Tuesday in August. get to the polls. Get to the polls. If you have not registered to vote, do it now. You're running out of time. And your vote counts. And I think it counts more in the primary than it does anywhere else. Because less people vote in the primary, so each vote counts for more.
That's true.
And you actually have some decent choices. By the time it gets to November, a lot of times the choices have already been made for you, especially in a county like Genesee, where we're predominantly, for the most part, Democratic. And so the people who carry the election in the primary are the ones that are going to automatically be rolling in it in November. So get to the polls August 7th. Mark your calendars. Take a little time out. Get there. Make it a priority. And we can't continue to complain about the problems if we don't at least participate and try to do something to change those.
Right.
And that's what Eric's doing by running for office. He's getting a little bit more involved than most of us are willing to do. So I commend you for doing that.
Thank you. Two things real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
One, if you'd like to donate to my campaign, go to electgunnels.com/donate. And if you also, if you're going to be voting in the 48th district for me, and that in the 48th district is from Montrose all the way over here down to Davison. It includes Richfield Township, Genesee Township, Forest, Thetford, Vienna, and Montrose. And if you are voting for me, when you go to the voting polls in the primary, you can split. You have to split your ticket. You have to vote either all Democrat or all Republican. Since I'm on the Democratic ticket, if you want to vote for me, you must vote on the Democratic side. But I would ask that you actually not vote straight ticket, but that you actually check mark my name. Because what that does, because every opponent gets a Democratic vote if someone just votes straight ticket. But if you check mark the name, they get the actual vote under your name, and the other person does not. So that is important.
So don't just check off the big box at the top.
And go ahead and while you're there, check mark what governor you want, because the governor's race is in the primary. That's where you have the biggest selections. By the time November gets here,
between Whitmer, Thanadar, and Abdul.
Yeah.
Saeed.
Right. Yes. So you've got those. If you want to vote in the governor's race at all on the Democratic ticket, you've got to vote in the primary in order to vote for those candidates. If you want to see one of your candidates progress to it. So thank you very much for having me, Jeremy, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, his site, if you want to donate, please, it's electgunnels.com/donate. It's real easy. Go there, chip in a few bucks. Every dollar counts. You guys see the road signs out there. Those are expensive. Campaigns aren't cheap. So it's not like Eric's going to, Yaya's and getting extra chicken now.
That's exactly right. All of our donations go into campaign literature like this right here. Just paperwork, literature, cards, flyers, posters. And yard signs. We are doing a big push for yard signs right now.
Cool beans. Cool. Well, guys, thanks for joining us on the show this week. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. We're glad to be back here at the studios of allpointstv.com. Please check out their other podcasts when you can. Get the other pertinent information. Find out what's happening in your city. Mr. Gunnels,
thank you.
Thank you for being back in the studio with us. Always a pleasure.
Yep.
And John, thanks for being with us and making it happen back there. Really appreciate it. You guys, thank you for being at the club and making it happen every day. G3C Club members, you're the best. So enjoy it. I hope you have some fun down there, and we'll see you soon.
Awesome.